We gotta talk about this Z06 transmission. So I read an article the other day, and at the end of this video, I think you guys are gonna agree with me on this one. I think that GM may have kind of messed up the transmission. Let me explain. Now, really quickly, we're not talking about performance or reliability. This transmission is, from what I can see, pretty reliable from what I've noticed. And performance-wise, it shifts quickly, it's a dual clutch. It pretty much checks all the boxes for that. What I'm talking about is how GM designed this car. They designed this car for the track. Now, obviously, this car has the 8-speed. Its competitors like the Lamborghini, McLaren, or even probably Porsche, I'm not sure off the top with Porsche, but I do know that McLaren and Lamborghini do use 7-speed dual clutch transmissions. Why GM went with the 8? Not sure why. But regardless of that, this car from 0 to about 100 is absolutely ridiculous. After 100, well, that's the problem. Now, I'm sure you guys would like to hear a cool startup. We're gonna take the car for a quick drive. Here it is. Now, one thing I like about the Corvette, and then all the other sports cars do it too, is when the car is still cold, they do increase that red line for you. That way you don't damage your engine, obviously. But you know, even when the transmission is not at operating temp, let's go and put it in the track mode so you can see that. See right there, the transmission is at 84 degrees. I would say about 130, 140 is a safe number. That's where at least I like to be at before I start to do really any wide open throttle, things like that. But yeah, as I said, this car, when you go to downshift, for example, look at that. It's just instant. Absolutely flawless. However, this is what I'm talking about right here. Here we go. I thought I had some footage from my last car from a 20-mile-an-hour roll, and I wanted to show you the difference between the two from about that speed to about 140, 150, because as I said, the way that GM geared this car is why I'm doing this video. So let's go ahead and jump into this article. I think you guys will find this kind of interesting. How good is the Z06? Motor Trend did a comparison against the Lamborghini Huracan Technica and McLaren 765 LT, which is, in my opinion, almost a hypercar. Let's just be honest here, that car is out of this world good. But let's go ahead and jump down to the bottom here. They did a great write-up on all three cars, but let's really get down to the nitty-gritty of what I'm trying to make my point about. So it says here, supercar transmission. Combustion powered supercars mostly use twin clutch automatic transmissions, and each of these cars put its own spin on the concept. Lamborghini's Doppia Frizzoni, I don't know how to say that, and McLaren's seamless shift gearbox, both built by Graziano, employ 7 ratios, while the Corvette's Tremec box features 8. That's because the Corvette is aiming for both 0 to 60 mile-an-hour braking rates at the low end and quiet cruising with decent highway fuel economy at the top end. See, that's problem number 1 right there. Trying to gear a car like this for fuel economy should be like the last thing on your mind. That's why you buy a Stingray. The Stingrays have active fuel management, which I don't agree with, but nevertheless, this car should not ever be considered fuel efficient. And if I'm being honest, this car gets about the same fuel economy as my Hellcat, driving it about the same. It might get 1 mpg better, but the Audi R8 gets about 14, 15 driven hard. So with that extra gear, it's not really doing much for fuel economy. So here is why I did this video. The Corvette features the shortest first gear ratio by 3 to 7%. That doesn't seem like much,
but it is. And get this, in the tallest top gear ratio by 42 to 84%. The Lamborghini gets the closest and the most evenly spaced ratios, designed to maximize leverage across the entire speed range. This is why I don't like the Z06. The car already has the option to get the high wing, and I wouldn't buy a Z06 without that, because it just makes this car a Z06 in my opinion. The problem is, with that extra drag, the way that they gear this car, it runs out of steam after about 120 miles an hour. Now, it's still pulling hard, but these cars here are going faster. Now, they put in quotation right here, the Corvette's 8th gear could theoretically hit 370 miles an hour in a vacuum, which is kind of funny. The McLaren's gearing slot somewhere in between, imperiously disinterested in 60 mile an hour sprinting, comfort, noise, or fuel economy. You know why? Because McLaren makes the most rawest race car ever. Make no mistake about it, McLarens are unreliable, and I probably would never own one outside of warranty unless I pay cash for the car. That's the only way I would own a McLaren, is if I can pay cash and I'm not concerned about a big repair bill. But despite that, this is where I think GM really went wrong, is on this gearing. So let's go ahead and jump over to the Tremec real quickly. I'm gonna go over some specs on the transmission, and then what we'll do next is I'm gonna continue reading this, and I'm gonna give you guys what I think GM should do for the future. Here is the Tremec transmission. I believe the code name's up here if you want to see it. It's a TR9080, 8-speed dual clutch. So here's some of the specs. Just be sure to pause. I'm not going to read everything, but stronger 6-plate clutch is what they say. 7% deeper, 556 to 1. Final drive, strengthened case and bell housing, revised lubrication system for the track ready oil level from the factory, larger output shaft flanges to support high strength half shafts. Here are the gear ratios for the Tremec transmission, which is the 8-speed. First gear is a 2.91 to 1 ratio. Okay? And you guys see right here, 8th gear is a 0.33 to 1. This goes to show you, yes, GM 100% gear this car for fuel economy. This is supposed to be a track-ready weapon, but it identifies as a road car. Just saying. I'm just saying. Now, Lamborghini does not put a lot of the numbers out there for their gear ratio, so I'm going to use this McLaren. This is a 570. So they're showing here first gear is a 398 to 1. Now, you might be wondering, what do these numbers really mean? So, real quick, let's go back to the Corvette. Okay. So this would be considered a taller gear compared to the McLaren, okay? So a taller gear is going to have a lower numerical number. However, it does provide higher RPM and quicker acceleration. Now back over to this McLaren, this is what you would consider a shorter gear, that 398. And shorter gears have higher numerical numbers and provide on-demand peak torque and more precise control over acceleration. In other words, McLaren could give two craps about fuel economy. I don't know if you guys saw their 7th gear, but it was a 0.69 to 1 compared to 0.33. So why GM decided to gear their cars that way, I don't know. But final drive for the Corvette is a 556 versus McLaren's 330 to 1. One thing I'll tell you is this, and this is kind of why I did this video. It would be nice in the future, maybe not for the C8, but for the C9, it would be nice to maybe see options for different gearing. I would prefer my car to be geared kind of like the McLarens and the Lamborghinis of the world, because I like the idea of that top end speed. Those cars still accelerate pretty quickly to 60 miles an hour, even though the McLaren's going to be a little bit behind a Z07 package, Z06. It will catch it very quickly, and it's going to walk away from it because it is twin turboed and the way that they gear the cars. Let's go ahead and read that article, and then I'll pretty much end the video. This is the Motor Trend comparison with the McLaren, Lamborghini, and the Z06, so we're on the same page. So it says here, each car has the paddle shifters, and one of the editors did say that GM did crack the Porsche's PDK code, which is their transmission, because again, the transmission in the Z06 is absolutely amazing when it comes down to performance. Absolutely the best. And if you scroll down here, this is what I wanted to read you guys last. Talking about acceleration. Now it says here we doubt supercar owners drag race their cars very often. That's a lie. Most of them do that because not many people know how to go around a track. But you guys see down here, the Corvette's gearing gambit pays off with the quickest sprint to 60 miles an hour. But taller gearing from there on blunts the Corvette's acceleration enough to let the others pull away from 80 miles an hour on up. By the quarter mile, the Huracan is 0.2 seconds ahead. The McLaren is 0.5 seconds ahead. So even though it's quicker off the line, these cars, because of their gearing, walks it right back down. With trap speeds telling the real weight to power story, that's another problem. The Z06 is heavy. The McLaren hits 142.6 miles an hour. The Lamborghini is doing 134.5. And the heavier aero drag bedeviled Chevy just 128.2 miles an hour.
Thoughts? I think GM should offer 2 gearing options. I think that it would be the best thing they ever did. When they made this car mid-engine, they allowed this car to evolve to newer buyers. And because of that, people like me were put on notice. See, I've always liked Corvettes, but I never saw myself as a Corvette guy. But seeing the Z06 and hearing it, it made it easy for me. The goal and plan for me was to just save up and get something in the future, like maybe a older Lamborghini Huracan, maybe twin turbo it, or go back to an Audi R8 and twin turbo it. But with this car, it just had the whole package. But as I said, when I first got this car out early one morning, got it on the open road, I noticed how much slower it felt compared to the cars I've driven in the past. And normally as you got over 100, it felt like it was pulling even harder. But with the Z06, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like it's missing something. And I think it's missing the shorter gearing option. It has a taller gearing, which is good for the track if you're not really getting over 140 miles an hour. But even still, as you guys saw in that article, once it gets over 80 miles an hour, the other cars are pretty much gone. And they're just walking away from it because of how they geared it. So they don't really need 8 speeds. And I understand that there are people who buy the Corvette and they want a quieter car, more fuel efficient on their cruise to the golf course. But for those like me who don't care about fuel economy and want the car to be as loud as possible, we want the shorter gearing. Peace.